This is the second part of a series critiquing the story of Shadow Generations in depth. It is recommended that you watch the previous parts first, just so we're all on the same page. The full playlist is in the description, though be warned, you're gonna be here a while. As always, you are free to disagree and make your own counter arguments in the comments below. As always on this channel, I welcome debate, and for your convenience, I will have these videos organized into chapters separated by topic. And I'll put an addendum at the start of upcoming parts if necessary. And if I sound weird, that's probably because I was at the time. I recorded this 4 or 5 months ago. I'm recovering from a cold, so please be understanding. Anyway, on to the feature presentation. Chapter 7. Okay. There are so many problems with the scene we are about to cover that I could unironically rant about it for over an hour and not repeat myself once, but I shall attempt to restrain myself here. So first, let's briefly talk about framing devices. Framing devices are important when it comes to flashbacks, dreams, and other abstract sequences, and being able to discern one of them from the other and present-day reality. They are also easy to grasp when utilized effectively. If a bunch of scary, off-putting, and nonsensical things happen, then we cut to someone waking up by jumping out of their bed because of the Kuleshov effect, we innately understand all the prior nonsense was part of said character's nightmare and none of it actually happened. For all of its many problems, at least episode 1 got that much right. Likewise, a simple J-cut and or some context clues, or even just establishing text can easily communicate that we're in a flashback now. Flashbacks can be useful for many reasons. I can't and won't list them all, and you don't necessarily even need to telegraph the fact that your story is being told out of sequence as long as you construct it so that it is reasonable for the audience to be able to straighten it out themselves. So, what is the framing device used for the opening Maria sequence in episode 2? Well, we begin with a glitchy match cut and text establishing that we're on the arc 50 years ago, thus establishing that we aren't on the arc and this isn't 50 years ago, and that this is another unreliable nightmare fever dream. Don't worry, we'll be coming back to this, but I can't keep getting ahead of myself. And the end of the sequence is an L-cut fade to white, to the next scene of Shadow raiding in Eggman's bases in Reality Land. So, if this is a dream, still foreshadowing, then when did Shadow have this dream? Did he have it while he was traveling to the base? Was he sleep skating across the globe? If this is a dream, then its integration into the edit is nothing short of flipping bizarre. So let's stop beating around the bush that is the sequence by proceeding to beat it directly. And I will withhold all criticisms about any logistics not making sense because it is obviously a dream. Maria walks down one of the arc's corridors with some files in her hands. What are those files? Scene doesn't say, so I guess they don't matter. Maria opens the door and...
Tell that freak to stay away from me!
Ah, yes. Racism. So that's the young commander from Shadow 05. So long story short, the commander was a young kid who lived on the Ark and was friends with Maria. He stumbled upon Gerald making a Faustian deal with Black Doom to create Shadow and got the traumatizes. He, for some reason, wasn't on the Ark on the day the incident occurred where Maria and everyone else died. After the deaths of everyone he cared about, he would go on to grow up over the course of 50 years and became the commander of Gun. He had this whole vendetta thing against Shadow, blaming him for the deaths of everyone on the Ark due to a misunderstanding. Eventually, the two discovered the truth about the past and began to reconcile and work together. And I stress that that was the short version that minimizes the sheer amount of multiple choice nonsense. And after Shadow 05, she never appeared in anything canon again. Until right now, that is. So this is that guy as a kid, and he hates Shadow at this point and thinks he's an evil demon spawn because he's a little kid who hasn't gotten to know him, lacks mature perspective, and doesn't know any better.
Tell that freak to stay away from me, Abe!
Abe? As in Abraham? Actually, let's put a pen on that. And for future reference, you should keep everything I've said about Abraham Towers in the back of your head because they'll be coming back to him, believe you me. Maria enters the dark room and sees Shadow staring at some giant tuber. Wait, what is that? Is that a death leech larva? But how? Why? Wait, sorry. I said I wasn't gonna complain about logistics, so we'll put a pin in that.
Shadow, are you alright?
Maria, I'm fine. It's just the professor created me using alien DNA. The black arms, he called them. The same DNA as this larva. This ugly, heartless creature. I may look like a hedgehog, but I'm really no different than this thing.
There it is! I was wondering when the characters would start saying only exactly what they mean without any room for nuance or ambiguity again. Also,
You can't just have your characters announce how they feel. That makes me feel angry.
okay, let's briefly break this down line by line. Shadow starts by denying his existential crisis, and he doesn't want to talk about it with Maria, and then he immediately tells her what his problem is without any further pressing on her part. So, I guess he does actually want to get this off his chest. You know, writing dialogue is hard. Shadow then exposes information directly to the audience again. Okay. He tells Maria that he was created by Gerald with the blood of the black arms, the same DNA as the larva in front of him, which, I don't think that's right. I could have sworn he was made with the DNA of Black Doom, and not this larva that spontaneously appeared on the arc for this scene. Trust me, we'll get there. He then says that the larva is an ugly and heartless creature, and because he is its third cousin 16 times removed, it therefore means that he also must be ugly and heartless by association. Yep, that logic certainly logics. He says that he might look like a hedgehog, but he is really no different to his third cousin 16 times removed who is sitting right in front of him.
Actually, let's put a pin in this.
Hey. Remember what I said a while ago about characters only ever saying exactly what they mean without any room for nuance or ambiguity? Well, Maria's about to force feed you the exact takeaway Ian wants you to have from this scene.
It's not true. You have a big heart. It may be difficult for you to express it, but I know that deep down, you really do care about me, about everyone. What you do is what defines you. I know you're having a hard time finding answers, but I'm certain you will one day. Then, you'll find even more people you can trust.
Now, this isn't my first rodeo. I know when a story is setting up a theme when I see/hear it. You see, Shadow really does care about people deep down, which is why he goes about the most convoluted and dumb time-wasting path imaginable to saving the world, neglects to inform the proper authorities about the impending existential threat, and throws his working relationship with humanity at large into the garbage for no discernible reason. And one day, he'll find friends that he can trust to ignore all of his concerns, bully him into attending an unimportant event while the flipping world is in danger, put him into a poorly thought-out plan that would have ended in him dying in a fiery inferno if it weren't for Commander Ex Machina, and proceed throughout the entire rest of the storyline to stand on the sidelines 5 yards away with an eye in earshot while he's clearly having a psychotic breakdown. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself again. Saying that this idea for a thematic identity is confused would be a misuse of the term confused. In reality, it's completely neurotic, which is what will inevitably happen if you don't proofread or redraft your scripts. To play devil's advocate, maybe he only had an afternoon to write all these scripts front to back, and he wasn't allowed to go back and fix anything. I mean, that certainly would explain a lot. This is the point of the analysis where we begin to acknowledge the story's true and ultimate failure. Continuity errors, characters acting out of character, acting like morons, psychopath, being nonsenses, bad dialogue, and story regression. All of those things are indeed dumb, annoying, bad, and I hate them, but they all pale in comparison to the deeper and more fundamental problem. And that's the fact that the story's messages are all undermined due to bad, contradictory writing. The story will constantly trip over itself without even realizing it, even when it doesn't have anything new or interesting it wants to say at all. Anyway, that was it. We are absolutely done talking about this scene. Except no, we're not, because of course. So, I know I literally just promised to not complain about any logistic problems with these dream sequences, but I feel the need to stress that the sequence must be a dream and that it is not a flashback to something that actually happened. Because if this were supposed to be an actual flashback, that would be just So for the sake of argument, let's pretend that this is an objective flashback so we can establish that it can't be one. First, the Death Leech. Sweet chaos, the Death Leech. This thing just, there was never a Death Leech on the Ark 50 years ago. I swear that didn't happen and wasn't a thing before. Like, if this were a flashback, that would mean Black Doom left Professor Gerald a leech to study for Project Shadow. Even though, canonically, by the time Doom left with the Black Comet, the progress on Shadow was basically done. And he was made from Doom's DNA, not the larva's. And after Gerald finished Shadow, I'm just supposed to believe that he left the thing alive and didn't dispose of it for some reason, and left it in a glass cage in some room that you don't need a password or like high-level security clearance to enter, because Abe, Shadow, and Maria, none of whom are even employees on the Ark, were able to all just walk in? I could have sworn Gerald was heck-bent on keeping the fact he made a Faustian deal with an alien warlord a secret? Also, if this were a real flashback and it was super important for us to know that there was a Black Leech on the Ark, you would think that that would have been mentioned in Gerald's journal. Like, at all.
Don't worry, we'll get to that.
Also, I'm just now noticing this. This random unsecured room is in the Ark's underbelly. And you can tell because the hallway leading to it is covered by blinding windows, because this hallway is just a reused set from episode 1. I do not understand why you would choose that location to secure this thing. Surely you would want this thing contained deeper within the vessel. Also, I need to remind you that one of Gerald's core motivations during this era, aside from saving Maria, was to screw over Black Doom. If Doom left the leash there, why doesn't Gerald think it's part of some plan that could be foiled if he just killed it? What's Black Doom gonna do? He's light years away. And like, what if this thing was released by some idiot and ate someone? Like, this thing's diet is living flesh. Wait a second. Okay, timeline-wise, this scene would have to take place at minimum a few months after Doom and the Black Comet bounce to allow for Shadow to be fully completed, for him to awaken, and for him and Maria to be this well acquainted. So how would this thing even still be alive? This thing needs to eat living flesh, remember? What has Gerald been feeding it? Why would he still be feeding it for months after it's outlived its alleged and presumed usefulness? Anyway, I would like to address the Titanic elephant in the room. Now, hypothetically, did someone call my name? No, I didn't call on you to return. Shoo vamoose. Now, hypothetically, if this were a flashback and not a dream, that would be crazy, I know! Then, Ian, do you not know what the word secret means? It means not known or seen, or not meant to be known or seen by others. Gerald was heck-bent on not letting anyone know about the whole dealing with the alien warlord thing, because if word got out on that, the gun-vermit might just assume that it's treason then. And then they might overreact by, oh, I don't know.
Storm the Ark, destroy all evidence.
There was and is no reason why Gerald would need or even want to tell Shadow or Maria any of those details. There is no reason, no motivation that he would have to not leave them completely in the dark and let them have a normal-ish childhood unsullied by angst. I swear the footage on screen is completely unrelated, and you could tell because that's the only reason I'd ever explicitly call it out. So, if this is a flashback, how would either Shadow or Maria know about any of the things that they are talking about? The dialogue between these two is the biggest giveaway that this is another unreliable nightmare fever dream that's a figment of imagination like we've already covered in episode 1. Because there is no reason why Shadow should know that he was sprayed with alien DNA, or that Gerald would go out of his way to tell him that they were called the Black Arms. And there's no reason why any of this information shouldn't be new to Maria either. The way she responds to Shadow's monologue implies that none of this information is some earth-shattering revelation that she was unaware aware of beforehand. She acts as she already knew all the things Shadow just went on about. The best case scenario for the integrity as Gerald as a character would be that the two kids somehow found out about the secret on their own despite his best efforts. But as of now, that would just be conjecture, unsupported by the actual text of the story. So it's a very good thing that the sequence is very obviously a dream that has no actual bearing on the canon. Hold on 1 second there! What? What hypothetical? What stupid interjection do you have for me now? This scene is obviously a flashback! No, it isn't! We've been over this! I've stated that it can't be a dozen times! I'm not humoring this! Remember your talk about framing devices? This scene cuts from the main timeline to this scene and ends fading to wipe back to the main timeline. And also there's the establishing text stating that the scene is on the arc 50 years ago. We've seen cinema before, and this is clearly the language for a flashback. Why shouldn't we take the story at its word? Opening of episode 1 had the same establishing text, and it was blatantly an unreliable dream sequence like I've been talking about. You said yourself that we as critics must engage with the media as it exists, and not as we wish it did. Why can't it be the case that the title card text is also unreliable? Odds are the guy who put it there was an underpaid editor who wasn't using his thinky bits real good, and his usage has no reflection on Ian's intent for the story or the individual scene. Even if the scene being an objective flashback does create massive problems, that wouldn't prove that it is a dream, but only that it is badly written, and you think it would cause less damage if it were a dream. Also in the animatic, there is another scene that uses the exact same framing device and is clearly a flashback. Are we just supposed to assume that scene is also a lie? No, I am not having this. That makes... Wait, hold on. Am I going crazy, or did you actually make a logical argument? Wait a minute. I think you're right on something for once. Yeah. Wait, hold on. Am I right? Yeah, I said you were right, and that means I was wrong. You don't have to rub it in. Look, just take this win already and leave. You've annoyed me enough already. Wait. Hold on, that means all my catastrophizing over the hypothetical problems that would exist if the sequence were as an objective flashback. Oh no. Just as a bit of foreshadowing, anyone who attempts trying to genuinely understand or engage with a storyline at any level will inevitably have to endure one giant exercise in gaslighting, which is an absolutely bold statement that requires a lot of substantiation. So let's just put a pin in that, because I promise you that statement will make intuitive sense in retrospect, because we have absolutely not seen anywhere near the worst of it. Somehow. Anyway, I would just like to note that when it comes to this scene, that we are still not done, because again, of course we aren't. See, I wasn't exaggerating when I said I could talk about this one scene for hours. Now, object permanence is a very easy concept to grasp, and hopefully you do not need to ask... And hopefully you don't need me to explain it, because I only have to assume no one watching this video is younger than the age of 1, but you never know these days. But unfortunately, in recent times, many a writer or director of a big budget productions have seemed to lose sight of this very simple and easy to grasp concept, often creating scenarios in which characters, things, places, and concepts seem to begin and cease existing whenever said entity becomes or stops being explicitly relevant or immediately perceptible. So now I ask you to actually think about the logistics of what led up to the events of this flashback. And guess what the next problem I'm going to bring up is going to be? If your guess was Abraham Tower, you are correct. Oh my goodness. So, what do we know for certain? Well, Shadow and Abe were both in the Leech room, and then he leaves, telling Maria, "Tell that freak to stay away from me or so help me," referring to Shadow. And notably, Abe screams this, as Shadow is not bothering him whatsoever, and is completely entranced by the Leech. So, What is even happening? This baffles me because for the life of me, I can't come up with a single way for this altercation to make any sense. What led up to this? Option 1. Did Abe somehow know about the leech, then drag Shadow here to go, look, that's a FWAKY thing, and you be a FWAKY thing too? No, that doesn't work, because then why would he tell Maria to tell Shadow to stay away from him? Because then he would be the one who went out of his way to interact with Shadow. So that doesn't make any sense. He's the one who started the altercation. So clearly he doesn't want Shadow to stay away from him then, would he? And Shadow was busy being entranced by the leech, so he literally didn't do anything to provoke this reaction. Option 2, was Abe just walking through the hallways, entered the room where Shadow already was by complete coincidence, and then immediately run out of the room exactly when Maria arrived, also by coincidence, then telling Maria to tell Shadow to stay away from him? I mean, wow, that would be a funny and contrived coincidence. And it would also make Abe's line a hilarious overreaction, even for an 8-year-old, because Shadow was nowhere near him and didn't do anything to him. Option 3, yeah, I'm out of possible interpretations. There just isn't any way to make the scenario make sense. So why was it written this way? Why is Abe even here when he barely contributes anything in this scene? Well, we will be getting to that second one next episode. But as for the first question, I could explain as to why it was written that way. You see, Ian had one goal when writing Abe's role in this scene, to communicate the fact that he does not like Shadow. And clearly the best way of conveying that information is by having him explain exactly what he means without any room for nuance or ambiguity. In case it isn't obvious as to why this is a problem, it is very simple to explain, and the answer is context. This scenario in which he declares his feelings is so vague and nondescript that I don't even know what he's reacting to, which wouldn't be a problem worth commenting on if this was just a dream sequence, but oh well. Yelling at someone to stay away from you is usually only a thing that happens when the other party is invading your personal space and is being unreasonable. And I stress that Shadow couldn't have been doing anything like that because his mind and attention are preoccupied at the moment. Otherwise, the statement is a generic one. Abe just doesn't like Shadow and feels the need to yell at Maria about it every time he sees her, which would be extremely insufferable to be around, not gonna lie. This line is boring. It leaves nothing to the imagination. It is just what you see on the surface, and there's nothing behind the eyes. This is not just a nitpick, because this lack of care and attention is representative of a general apathy that will infect everything else in this story. And oh boy, we are going to get there. Part of me even wonders how Abe's inclusion in the scene could even end up so slapshot. It's almost as if Ian and Co conceived an entire flashback around the idea of Shadow, Maria, and young Abe being together, but the entire scene got cut for time, and they were so married to the idea of foreshadowing Abraham's future relevance in the Shadow Maria flashback that they retroactively slapped in the beginning of the remaining flashback at the 11th hour without any regard to how little sense this integration is the scene made. But, you know, that's just conjecture. There's no proof of any of that. or anything. And to close this chapter off, out of all of the memories Shadow could be reminiscing on during this point in the story, why this one? A random moment that's only tangentially related to the things that aren't even currently happening. If anything, this scene's only purpose is to foreplunge in a scene we won't be getting to for a while. I could probably go on, but we really do need to move on to the next scene. This chapter's already flipping long enough as is. Okay, welcome back. So, Flashback thinks he is no different to his third cousin. His ugly, heartless cousin. His third ugly, heartless. Okay, yeah, sure. His ugly, heartless third cousin. 16 times removed. That's going in. Maria. Flashback and reality land are going to be indistinguishable from Maria because time travels. Maria does not like when Abe is meanie. Cares about Shadow. Clarification. Is meanie to Shadow. And then thinks what people do is what defines them. That's not going to come up later. Abe. New character. TeL DaT frWAKY to StWay WAy FoRM. And last but not least, Gerald is a moron who leaves evidence of his treason in an unsecure room where just anyone could walk in for no reason.
Oh yeah, I kind of forgot that Abe, he stares through the window and he feels guilty about yelling at Shadow and or Maria, and I forgot to mention that, but it should probably go in the character notes section now that I think about it.
Chapter 8, the cut scene. Get it? Like a cut scene in a video game. Okay, just for reference, I will refer to the scene that we just talked about last chapter as the final version, and this animatic sequence as the cut version, even though that language is not strictly true. If I were to be pedantic, the scene we just talked about is a composite of two scenes in the original script/animatic, where the first scene is of Maria finding Shadow staring at his third cousin 16 times removed, and the same dialogue exchange occurs relatively unaltered, and the other is Abe, Maria, and Shadow attending school on the Ark together. Now, if the animatic is anything to go by, it seems that this project has some running length related growing pains, and I am totally not just saying that because of the full 4-minute discrepancy between the animatic and the final version, because odds are Ian's final draft of the script also probably featured even more scenes, dialogue, and context that didn't even make it into the animatic, let alone the final animation. That's just how this business works. Everyone keeps changing their minds on every detail constantly. No one can agree on anything, compromises have to be made, and then you have the distributor being stingy about the economics of the running length and how much they are really willing to spend on the project. Also, this isn't even a guess because Ian said it himself.
We had a lot of back and forth on the script early on, just making everything fit in that time limit, finding the right amount of lore to put in there, and the final product just whittled it down to what we had like on an initial pass where it was much more streamlined.
That being said, what we know about the decisions on what to cut and reshuffle absolutely baffle me, but we will get there. Now, I feel it's best to elaborate on the basics of writing characterization, and more specifically why I keep complaining about characters only ever saying exactly what they mean without any nuance, ambiguity, or room for interpretation. Now, hypothetically, what is the best way to learn the character of someone you are unacquainted with? And I'm talking in real life here. Do you learn more about someone through someone else telling you objective things about them in list format? By listening to the person in question telling you things about themselves? Or by actually observing that person's actions in the way they treat others firsthand? Now, I'm not going to answer this question right now. Instead, I'm going to let you keep it in the back of your mind as we continue through this chapter. We begin the scene seeing young Abe and Maria on the Ark 50 years ago inside a classroom working on tests while Shadow stands off to the side, leaning on a wall, crossing his arms, and already the scene is a massive step up from the final version. Remember how a couple minutes ago I was complaining about the logistics of what led up to the final version of the scene? How the staging of each character's starting positions in the scene didn't gel with their behaviors, especially with Abe. The pieces, their positions on the board, and the moves they make are confusing and don't make sense. What led up to this is just an array of question marks with no plausible answer. In stark contrast, in the cut version, why are Abe, Maria, and Shadow in the same location when Abe can't stand being around Shadow? Well, this scene actually has an answer that makes sense, and that is school. They both have to go to school, and Abe, Shadow, and Maria are the only kids in the arc canonically, making it impractical and unnecessary for there to be more than one classroom. Therefore, Abe and Shadow can't just avoid each other 24/7 because you can't just not go to school. Trust me, I tried that. It didn't take. This is kind of an Adoy observation, I know. It's the kind of obvious setup for a scene that is so obvious that you don't even need to put thought into it. And that's exactly my point. The setup is so competent that I wouldn't even feel the need to point it out if it weren't for the fact that I'm critiquing Shadow Generations, a story otherwise completely lacking in the competence department. But that's enough about the setup. What happens next?
Oh, this is impossible.
It's pathetically easy.
Oh my goodness. Was that a character interaction? Like an actual one? With subtlety and nuances that I could break down in depth like right this moment? Abe's line is so simple. He's frustrated by the assignment. He doesn't understand what he's supposed to do. And what is in the corner of his eye? The alien freak that he hates. Already finished and standing all smug and superior like.
How is it that he's already done and I'm struggling? That's not fair.
Shadow isn't stupid. He is not completely oblivious. He knows what he is doing, and that is rubbing in his small victory in the most efficient way possible while having the air of deniability. Maria is sitting right there after all, and he knows she wouldn't approve of an overt retaliation against Abe. This also kind of implies that Abe has already been hostile to Shadow, and he is beginning to respond in kind. You can't even complete a simple test. How do you like it when I'm being the one rude and superior to you? It's not as fun the other way around, is it? Also, in case it wasn't already obvious, the implication of someone finishing the assignment early also shows either intelligence, impatience, or strong competitiveness. And Shadow's retort reeks of a bit of an ego, all of which go away to characterize a character. Gee whiz! Did you notice how you were most likely able to pick up on all of that despite none of the characters in the scene explicitly telling you that Shadow had any of those traits, nor having to explicitly acknowledge and state aloud that Shadow finished early? It's almost as if something like that would be completely unnecessary because we, the audience, have eyes, ears, and brain cells that are pretty good at working together to parse information without it being completely spelled out, without any room for nuance or ambiguity. Ian, clearly you do still have somewhat of a grasp on this. So why is this aptitude absent every flipping where else? Sorry, I shouldn't get caught up and distracted. We should probably just keep moving.
Shut up. What do you know? You're just a monster anyway.
We continue with some more decent dialogue here.
But wait! Isn't he just saying exactly what he means about nuance or ambiguity?
Look, I understand where you're coming from here, but what's important isn't just what a character says, but also what they don't say. Think of this from another angle. Not what Abe is saying, but what action he is taking by speaking. He isn't just saying exactly what he means, he's also deflecting ire and attention away from his own shortcoming. He doesn't want to be the center of negative attention, and he whataboutisms his way into changing the subject. I dropped something. I need to grab that fidget thing I'm playing with. Where did it go? Oh my goodness. Where did that, there it is. Editor, cut that out. Also, he is potentially insinuating that the only reason Shadow was so good at the test was because he is an alien monster who is innately more intelligent and has all the answers pre-programmed into his head, and in his eyes, he considers that a form of cheating. He snaps because he doesn't believe he could possibly be on a level playing field with the ultimate life form.
This is impossible.
It's pathetically easy.
Shut up. What do you know? You're just a monster anyway.
When I complain about characters saying exactly what they mean without room for nuance or ambiguity, that is because there's nothing to take away from the line other than the literal words that were said aloud. The problem is that those lines had nothing behind their eyes and had nothing beneath the surface.
And why is it important to have things beneath the surface?
Because otherwise what you write is flipping boring. Hold on. Let me rephrase that. The problem with having your characters only saying exactly what they mean without anything under the... Actually, this will be much better if I came up with an example. Which of the following dialogue exchanges do you think is better, sharper, and more concise?
This is impossible.
It's pathetically easy.
Shut up. What do you know? You're just a monster anyway.
Or...
Ugh, I can't believe Shadow finished before me. I hate him.
Yes, let me rub this in your face. This is what you get for being mean to me during an altercation that happened earlier. Off-screen. But I am being subtle about this because Maria is sitting right there, and I don't want to upset her too much while I rile you up because you deserve worse, you punk. Also, I'm smarter than you, and that is why I finished way before you. And I have massive ego problems as well, my various character flaws that I refuse to acknowledge, mitigate, or address.
Well, I'm gonna respond by deflecting the negative attention in this conversation back on you, because I don't like it when my shortcomings are used against me, because I want to remain everyone's favorite, and that becomes harder if I have to acknowledge that I am not perfect. Also, I think you cheated because I believe you have all the answers already programmed into your mind because you're an alien freak monster.
Do you understand my argument here? Can you at least feel the difference? The same information was conveyed in the same-ish order, but that second one felt substantially worse and unnecessarily verbose while dragging on forever, right?
So, what you're saying is that by giving your characters lines of layers of subtlety, you could be more concise while conveying the same information while also getting the audience to actively participate in the fiction so they get the most out of any given scene instead of insulting their intelligence by slowly force-feeding them everything?
No! Wait, hold on. You're right again. Before today, you were always overly pedantic or infuriatingly wrong. What is happening? And he's gone again. Anyway, back to the dialogue.
Abe, don't be mean.
This is the point where Maria begins trying to defuse the situation. She doesn't want them to fight, but she doesn't yell at Abe or Shadow. She doesn't scold Abe for starting this or Shadow for escalating it. Instead, she speaks softly and tries to calm Abe down by appealing to his better nature. She loves both of them and doesn't want them to fight each other. Besides, these two are going to have to be around each other a lot, then they can't go to school like this indefinitely without causing escalating problems. Best to end this now by getting both parties to compromise and bury the hatchet.
But he is. I saw the professor make him with that alien.
Abe tries to get Maria to see his side. He isn't just expositing information, although this line does also function as exposition. He is trying to get her to see what he believes is the truth.
Maria, you're smart and reasonable. If only you saw what I saw, knew what I knew, you'd agree with me and see that thing for what it really is.
Also, the way Abe words his sentence makes it clear that this is information that he hasn't told Maria yet, because otherwise it would be weird if he were telling her something that he had already told her.
Shadow isn't a monster. He's special. He's my friend. And it breaks my heart you two don't get along.
This line is blunt and straight to the point. She is reframing the argument. She does not even address Abe's accusation, because even if it were true, it wouldn't matter to her. It doesn't matter where Shadow came from or how he was created, because she knows who he is. She speaks clearly and specifically. Maria has nothing to hide. She knows what she feels and what she wants for both Abe and Shadow, so she doesn't mince words. She doesn't give Abe the chance to misconstrue her.
Shadow isn't a monster. He's meant for something great. He's my friend just like you are, and I know that you two could be friends if you would just look for the things that you have in common.
I'm sorry if I upset you, Maria. And Abraham.
My goodness, another good line? What is happening? Shadow has been quiet for a few seconds as Abe and Maria have been going back and forth. When Abe calls Shadow a monster and Maria stands up for him, Shadow lets her handle the confrontation without barging his 2 cents into the picture. This conveys that Shadow has an amount of trust in Maria's ability to stand up for him. Even when Abe continues with his accusations, he stays quiet and lets Maria continue with her response. He then hears Maria's lamentation that he and Abe aren't getting along, and perhaps he rethinks his approach during this altercation. Maybe his aloof demeanor and his attempt at insulting Abe's intelligence was a bad call. Maybe Shadow trusts Maria's intuition and guidance and doesn't want to disappoint her. So if she thinks he and Abe should be good friends, then he's going to make sure that he isn't the reason why that doesn't work out. And take note of how Kirk Thornton delivers this line.
I'm sorry if I upset you, Maria. And Abraham.
The line starts genuinely, implying his apology to Maria is nothing but sincere. But when he has to specifically call out Abe by name, he pauses for a fraction of a second, and then he says his name in a more harsh tone, implying that he doesn't really want to apologize to him, but that his hand has been forced. Alternatively, the change in Shadow's inflection could suggest that he is apologizing to Abe first, in order to rub even that into his face. See? I can apologize and be the bigger man quicker than you as well. This line could have 2 very different meanings, and both of them would work within this interaction and would be in character for Shadow. Oh yeah, in case I never get around to saying this later, Kirk does an outstanding performance to Shadow throughout the entirety of Shadow Generations. And that's despite the fact that the script he's been given rarely, if ever, gives him anything to flipping work with.
Yeah, sorry, whatever.
Abe gets caught off guard and is put on the back foot in this altercation once again. And it's evident that he isn't actually sorry and just doesn't want to upset Maria. He's lost the argument, best to regroup and find a change in tack. His mind has not been changed. He still thinks and believes the same things he did before this started. It's just that Shadow has completely outplayed and disarmed him with one simple sentence. Maria then grabs Shadow's and Abe's hands and brings them together.
Thank you, both of you. When we return to Earth, I hope we can all still be together.
And at the end of this scene is the gut punch. We know that's never going to happen. It can't. And we know after this that Shadow and Abe were not friends when they got back to Earth. 50 years passed. The two had some pretty intense conflicts before the both of them realized the other wasn't the evil enemy they had always convinced themselves they were. Sure, they're allies now, but whatever relationship they have now is strained at best. Man, I'm kind of sad now. Wait, I just realized that the scene is over. Hold on a second, did I go through an entire scene without several major problems every 5 seconds? Wait, did I go through that entire 40-second scene giving it almost nothing but however many minutes of complete praise? Was that scene genuinely good? Oh my goodness, I think it was! What is happening? If I were to be super picky, I'd ask where their teacher is during all of this, but I'm willing to accept that they're just in the bathroom or something. I feel it is reasonable to assume that these kids don't necessarily need 24/7 supervision. I do not exaggerate when I say that this scene's only real flaw is that it is not in the final product. The worst part of this deleted scene is that it's the best scene. So why did they get rid of it? I'm losing my mind. I'm losing my mind. We're not even halfway through talking about the flipping prologue. And I haven't touched the main story yet. And I've already lost my mind. I cannot stress enough that this cut scene is only 40 seconds and is hyper efficient, whereas the scene that replaced it is nothing but a confounding waste of time that conveys very little in twice the amount of time. The scene they cut was better and half the length of the scene that replaced it. What is that?